The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Bear Psychology Radio Show with psychologist, author, and speaker, Dr. Anna Baranowski, where mind, mood, and what matters to you are discussed. We're broadcasting live from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, on Reality Radio 101. So get ready to talk, email, or post a message to us. We are looking forward to speaking with you and responding to your questions. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your host of the Bear Psychology Radio Show, Dr. Anna Baranowski.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be back with all of you again today. Today we're going to be talking about relationships and attachment wounds and how we might be able to have better relationships, hopefully. My name is Dr. Anna Baranowski, and this is Bear Psychology Radio, bearing witness to evolving mood, mind, health. I've found that the most profound changes occur when a person truly feels heard and understood, and I like to think of it as deeply bearing witness to life evolving. We can feel incredibly stuck when we live with our fears, stressors, and troubles alone, but when we share, dialogue, and feel supported, it provides a powerful foundation for us to move forward in understanding and care. I want to invite you to email if you have a question or a comment, or you just want to add to the conversation. Email instudio101@gmail.com. And I want to cover a lot of ground today about this issue because I think it's such an important one. I just find that, life can change so profoundly when we have really supportive and helpful relationships, ones that really leave us feeling nourished and understood. And I want to just start by asking you, when you're in a relationship, what do you think you're longing for most? Is it companionship or trust or truth, common interest, understanding? But really, what is the stuff that really joins you together, leaving you feeling deeply connected and, weaving a long, meaningful, and nourishing relationship? I like to think of it as a sense of a truly warm and caring and compassionate connection. When we feel really safe, especially if we've experienced trauma, and that really is one of the areas that I talk about a lot. Our relationships actually might need to be even sturdier, especially if we have a tendency to push people away if we are in a state of fear or mistrust. So, some of our own behaviors could lead us to feeling less connected when we really deeply need to have people around us. We really deeply need to know that, we can be safe in our relationships. But it's not always easy to get there when we have some struggles with relationships. And I think probably everybody has moments where they do struggle in relationships. But I think it does become more difficult if we've had trauma in our past or difficulties in our attachment building as children. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. And I want to reference Dr. Diane Poole Heller, who's an expert in the field of adult attachment. And, she talks a lot about how we can actually transform and, heal in our ability to connect deeply and securely. I mean, one of the biggest issues in our difficulties with connecting securely is that we may be triggered by old wounds which resurface, and our nervous system, which kind of that fight or flight regulation system, that helps us to get out of harm's way, can get very ignited if we have reminders of troubles or traumas that may be relationship related. So we may be trying to form close relationships only to find ourselves just constantly triggered by things that have less to do with this relationship and more to do with the past. So then it becomes very important to have a very strong understanding of, how attachment, how especially our early attachment has shaped us. And, just so you're aware, this whole idea of attachment, this is not a new thing. Attachment theory it's really about the relationship and bonds between people, long-term relationships, parent and child, and relationships in intimate bonds. So, the first person to really start researching and talking about this was a British psychologist, and his name was John Bowlby. And he talked a lot about relationships being long-term connections between human beings, and that there could be an underlying problem with our sense of anxiety and distress that comes primarily from our earliest relationships with our parents or primary caregivers. And if those relationships were troubled, then we can carry that into our later relationships. And this can cause pretty significant problems because we all know how important it is to be connected. We all have this feeling of longing, and we all have a kind of knowledge that when we feel close to other people, especially if we're experiencing something stressful, if we have a close, trusting relationship with somebody, then we feel a sense of reduced stress. And the research bears this out time after time. There's lots of research that, shows that if we're facing something stressful, if we have that person right beside us or holding our hand or, reminding us that it's going to be okay or that they're there with us during this difficult time, we actually can measure that stress is lower in those times as opposed to, facing a stressful situation alone and simply, feeling really uncomfortable, unsupported, not well. And this is not an unusual experience. A lot of people talk about it, but it really is supported by the research as well. So just be aware of that, you're not just making things up. If you feel like you want somebody close to you when you're facing something stressful, that's actually a really good idea. You do want to have somebody close to you when you're facing something stressful, and that, in fact, that kind of instinct is very self-preservative. So, really allow yourself to try to create friendships or connections with people who you trust, build intimate connections and relationships. Like, those are all very restorative things. But I want to tell you a little story about, places where we might run into trouble with that. We all have habits. And if one of our habits comes from our attachment styles, and I'm going to talk about attachment styles in a minute, if one of our habits comes from old attachment styles that are not serving us, then we may simply go back to old habits when we're feeling agitated or upset, or if we're put into a different environment or challenged or just feeling, things are not going so well for us. I'm going to tell you about this story about a white tiger named Mohini who lived most of her life in the Washington, D.C. National Zoo in a 12 by 12 foot cage. And every day, Mohini paced those cement floors in her small cage year after year. And, as things went up the chain of supervisors and staff at the zoo, it became really apparent that it would probably be good to expand this habitat for Mohini to something more expansive and natural, something more familiar to a habitat that might have been one where she has more room to move and is exposed to more healthy natural environments. So Mohini was transferred to a new environment that was, much larger, had more natural habitat, and interestingly enough, Mohini moved into a very small area of her new habitat, and didn't roam as much as one would expect when she was in her habitat. Like, she had learned, she'd grown accustomed to the 12 by 12 small environment and maintained this tiny little framework. Now, we all have these experiences where, within inside of ourselves, we have storylines of what our life can be like, what it should be like. Now, as adult human beings, thankfully, we can challenge our storylines. However, what's going to usually happen is we will start with the old storyline, which will always intrude. It will always come to the surface first, especially if we are exposed to new environments. It's interesting. Somebody was saying to me that, he's been going to gyms all of his life, and, he's got a bunch of friends at the gym that he's at, and he might need to go to a new area, and in going to a new area, he would have to go to a new gym and make new friends, and all of a sudden, even though he's always been comfortable in the particular gym that he's at, going to a new location, his old fears came up. Am I going to be liked? Will people respond well to me? Can I make friends here? So he had an old storyline, just like Mohini, the white tiger, had an old storyline. I can live in this 12 by 12 small corner, and I can't push beyond that. So I want you to ask yourself, what is your deep conditioning around your own relationships, and how does that limit you in the relationships that you are having today? Are you getting stuck? Are you not finding the kind of connections that you want? Are you feeling that, in fact, instead of, being, warm in your connections, you push people away? Or, do you choose people who are maybe not the best for you? So, it becomes important to recognize how crucial, our need for connection is. But the reality in our world today is that our inner circles, the true connections that we have, and I'm not talking about social media or anything like that, because that does not really count. I'm talking about the people we really deeply connect with. So in the past, the average was, something like 10 to 20 people that we would really trust and connect with regularly. That was like from 1985 to 2004, the average number of people that we would really connect with decreased from 3 to 2. Now, that's a big change. It's important because those strong social relationships tend to indicate longevity. So, the closer the connection that you have in your life, the deeper those social relationships are, the more meaningful and supportive that they are, the longer your life is. That's borne out in the research. So what should you do if your social life is lacking? Well, research shows us some things. What we want to be aware of, and I'm talking about this early on because I want you to think about how important it is to know the people who are even on the periphery. These are like people that you interact with, but maybe, they're just like I was talking about, maybe somebody you see, at the gym, or somebody who's on the periphery of your social circle who you connect with only once in a while. Interacting with these people who you have limited or weak social ties has an increased influence on your overall well-being. And, creating deeper friendships, can really be largely just a matter of putting in the time. So University of Kansas did a research study, and they found that it takes about 50 hours to go from, socializing from an acquaintance to become a casual friend, and then an additional 40 hours to become a real friend, and a total of 200 hours to become a close friend. That's wild, right? So, it's not like you're just going to meet somebody and then just expect them to move into the friendship group, or, really expect a lot from them. Like, it takes a lot of hours of pouring in to develop close friendships. Additionally, it's also actually important to realize that it's easier to revive a dormant social relationship because you have some, it's kind of like money in the bank. You've got hours in the bank already with that person that you can then build on. So what you're really trying to do is, go through all that is required in deepening those connections over time, building up understanding, a history between you and this person, a sense of trust, a sense of warmth, and, that we really actually need to make the effort consistently. This can be really hard in our super busy lives and our lives that are unfortunately filled with social media as a replacement for true connection. And I want to really kind of get you thinking about, how big a piece of our life that this has to be. Like, I actually, in my own life, I make it a kind of priority to arrange social gatherings. I have this tendency to really enjoy bringing people together. I've always really liked that. It's always been something that makes me feel really happy. I like bringing people together. So, it's something that I put time into, and it tends to, pay back dividends lots, because as a result, I see that, if I need to lean on somebody or reach out to somebody because of all this kind of work on the front end, giving a lot and, offering rather than asking, when I do ask, I do seem to get a lot of support. And that's a really beautiful thing, but it doesn't come without the effort. Okay, so now I'm going to read some emails that are coming in. So this one is from Tate. Hi, Tate. Tate says, and thank you for sending us an email, Tate. Tate says, hi, Dr. Anna. I like the Billy Joel song, Honesty. That is the most important aspect of a relationship. Oh, yes, thank you. I agree. I think honesty is super important, and what a lovely thing to remind us of. The second most important attribute of a relationship is respect. Absolutely. I mean, isn't it great to know that, when you're connecting with somebody, you've got these two beautiful qualities? With these two behaviors practiced in a relationship, it is a major win-win. Absolutely. Kate, beautiful. Love your show. Looking forward to it every month. Well, that's so sweet for you to say. Thank you so much, Tate, for your feedback, and absolutely stay connected with us. So let's read the next one. This is from Alexis. Alexis says, you're so right regarding having someone in your life who will help you with your problems, someone you can trust, confide in, and is a great listener. Sometimes just an ear is all that we need. It's true. It's so easy to imagine that we can just help ourselves and, take care of ourselves and be self-serving, but it just doesn't seem to work very well in the long run. We're human beings in need of human and humane connection, and those connections make us more strong in the long run. And sometimes we have to get out of old habits of keeping ourselves separate in order for us to really, start to come out and be part of the larger human community in a way that will really benefit us and work for us in the long run. So absolutely, I agree with that. So let's think a little bit more about what attachment, really is, and the kinds of attachment that we need to really think about. And I'm going to actually, although some people talk about three patterns of attachment, some people talk about 4 patterns of attachment, I'm going to tell you about 4 different patterns of attachment. And, depending on whose research I'm referring to, I might reflect on 4 or 3, but I'm going to explain the 4 right now. So secure attachment is really marked by distress when separated from caregivers, and joy when the caregiver returns. Like this is based on childhood studies. Children feel secure, and they're really able actually to depend on the people who are supposed to care for them. The child might feel upset if the caregiver leaves, but is definitely reassured as soon as that caregiver returns. And when a child is frightened, those children will turn to the caregiver because they're trusted. And that child knows that when they lean on those caregivers, they can get the comfort and the reassurance that they're seeking. And you can just imagine what that does for us as adults. Even in our selection of adult intimate partners and friends, if we have a secure attachment style, and we've learned that it's healthy and normal to have people in our lives who care for us in ways that leave us feeling secure, those are the people that we're going to seek out. Now I'm going to talk about ambivalent attachment. Now ambivalent attachment is interesting because these children, when they're upset, they can when those children are distressed, after a parent leaves, they actually have an attachment style that is not so common. It's only about 7% to 15%. And, they become very distressed when the parent leaves. They may kind of be struggling because there's a poor parental availability. So these kids cannot actually truly and fully depend on the caregiver when they have some kind of a need. It's like their parent may be distracted or unavailable or distressed themselves or uncertain, about their own parenting skills. So the children become ambivalently attached. So they do want to get care and support, but they're not getting the kind of care and support they need to feel secure. So avoidant attachment children with this kind of style tend to avoid their caregivers. And when they're given some kind of choice, they show no preference between a caregiver and a complete stranger. Can you imagine how much of a struggle that is for the child? What happens to this child as they're trying to get support and care? So these kinds of parents are often abusive or actually neglectful of their child's needs. And, the children may actually even be punished for reaching out to the caregiver, and then they're going to avoid, seeking out to that caregiver, that parent, when they need help in the future. So, they're going to turn into very self-reliant adults, and sometimes they'll choose adult relationships with people who present in the same way as their neglectful or abusive caregivers as children. So it can be really, really difficult. Now, the disorganized attachment, this is often a kind of blend. It's like a confusing mix of behavior. It might be disorientation or being confused or dazed, being both, avoidant and resistant to the parent, but they may be inconsistent in their behavior with their caregiver. And, what this usually happens in families where, parents are both comforting at times, but also can be neglectful and difficult to deal with at other times. So they develop this kind of disorganized attachment style, and it's very confusing. So these patterns, they're complicated, and they definitely impact how we organize our future adult relationships. And honestly, this is not just about our intimate relationships, but also about our relationships with friends and family. So it's everything. There are some people who they don't land in a intimate long-term relationship, and that's fine. But hey, it's good to have really close friends or relationships with people that we interact with. And if these old patterns are impacting you today, then you really want to do some work on self-reflection around that, because it is such an important area of our relationship. So here we've got another email from Beth. Thank you so much, Beth, for sending in this statement. What a great analogy regarding that tiger. Beth says, fear of the unknown is always a very real problem for us. We get into a comfort zone of life, and sometimes life outside of our human box can be very distressing to some folks. And Beth goes on to say, I went through that with a new job. Great topic. Yeah, you know what? It's so interesting, Beth, because I think there's always a learning curve in any new social situation. And I'm going to refer back to this research that I was referring to at the beginning, which is based on the number of hours that we need to actually create a meaningful connection with somebody, that just creating a casual friend requires 50 hours, whereas going from casual friend to real friend is another 40 hours, and becoming a close friend is 200 hours. So I think, in any situation, we do need to take the time, bring our best skills forward, and, having our best skills means not having fear dictate how we're going to respond to a new situation. But I do have to say this, and this is really a good example, Beth. I think anything that's novel or reminds us of something that we're frightened about can create discomfort. And I don't think it's so unusual for anybody to go into a new job and to have some feelings of discomfort or fear. I think that's pretty common. But I was just walking my dog the other day, and I noticed this man on a construction crew. He was working in the neighborhood, and for some reason I just felt uncomfortable. And there was absolutely no reason for this discomfort that was obvious to me. There was nothing really going on. I just felt this little bump of anxiety, and I continued to walk past the construction site, and this funny little discomfort started to subside. But I wanted to pay attention to it because I wanted to notice that for no really good reason, I had this little bump of anxiety, this little bump of stress. And I wanted to really pay attention to it, to remind myself that, that in itself is just an old ignition kind of pouring through. And of course, it'll pour through me like it would for anybody else, just like I have a normal physiology, just like anybody else, with its own triggers and cues and, rapid reactions at times. But, it's so easy to make a judgment and just to assume that there's something really bad going on. So I wanted to breathe, take my time, continue walking, reflect, and not make a quick judgment, but instead just let myself notice how I've got this inner bump of anxiety and that something got evoked, and I don't need to do anything with it. I don't need to create a story. I don't need to say, oh, maybe this is a bad guy or anything like that, because he didn't do anything to me. So there's no reason for any of that. So I wanted to just notice how very quickly that happens, even inside of myself, even with all the skills that I have. that I have a normal physiology, as you do, as we all do, and, really honoring that is so, so important. So now let's just go back to realizing how we can fall into funny moments based on our own history. I came across this book called Attached, The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love. And, it's written by two excellent writers, Amir Levine, who's actually a medical doctor, and Rachel Heller, who is a NA. And it's great because it has such good examples of relationships. And, there's one section that just starts with decoding relationship behavior, and I want to read it to you because it's so, so interesting. These are a couple of relationship examples of different people who were struggling. Only 2 weeks into dating this guy, and already I'm making myself miserable, worrying that he doesn't find me attractive enough, and obsessing about whether or not he's going to call. I know that once again I'll manage to turn all my fears about not being good enough into a self-fulfilling prophecy and ruin yet another chance at relationship. Wow, isn't that amazing? So remember, we're talking about stories and how stories can pour into the present. And with this individual, it seems clear that, she has some kind of story. She calls it her self-fulfilling prophecy that she's not going to be good enough and she's going to ruin her relationship chances. Okay, here's the next one. What's wrong with me? I'm a smart, good-looking guy with a successful career. I have a lot to offer. I've dated some terrific women, but inevitably, after a few weeks, I lose interest and start to feel trapped. It shouldn't be this hard to find someone I'm compatible with. Now, remember, I had just listed 4 different types of attachment styles. Now, it will be interesting to contemplate what kind of attachment style might this man have if he's dating these terrific women, but he keeps kind of pushing them away, feeling like he's losing interest, feeling trapped, and he can't stay with the relationship as it deepens. Here's another one. I've been married to my husband for years and yet feel completely alone. He was never one to discuss his emotions or talk about the relationship, but things have gone from bad to worse. He stays late at work almost every weeknight. On the weekends, he's either at golf with friends or watching the sports channel on TV. There's just nothing to keep us together. Maybe I'd be better off alone. Wow. So I would wonder what kind of spouse she married. What's his attachment style? Because you see, she may have her own attachment style, but what did she choose? Like, did she choose a man who was securely attached, who wants to deepen that connection, who would lean towards the relationship? Or did she choose a relationship with somebody who was avoidant or anxious or disorganized? What's going on here in these relationships? So each of these people, they're struggling with something that is keeping them from deepening their relationship, obviously. Okay, let's read some more emails that are coming in. Wow, this is a great question. Hi, Bryce. Thank you for sending in this question. I just love this. This is wonderful. So Bryce is asking, what is really a true friend, and what do you look for in that particular relationship? So many people are phony, you never know. Well, that is just a beautiful question. And, I think one of the things that is a hallmark of a close friend are people who know how to be compassionate, kind, and show up. Now, the question is what kind of friend are you, Bryce? And are you able to stay connected in your relationships? Are you able to warmly invite people in to, deepen, to reveal yourself? What are the ways in which you find relationships get closer over time? And do you have friendships that you feel are really helpful? I did a video a number of years ago. It was called Traumatic Loneliness, and I talk a little bit about, the fear of letting people in and how that impacts us and, what happens to us when we have trauma in the background, having us triggered constantly, making it difficult for us to connect. I think there are a lot of things that we can do to deepen our relationships. And I'm actually going to make sure that when we post this podcast, that I will put some suggestions about relationship tips in, because it's, kind of relationships are really absolutely a two-way street. And, we have to both take, some responsibility for how our relationships are unfolding, as well as, choose well, because, both of those things are really important. I mean, we can't just expect that, people are going to show up in our lives and, and not, bring something to it as well. So I think it's pretty common for us to, if we're struggling, if we have our own struggles in relationships, to, look to other people sometimes to meet our needs. But I think we usually have to be working on ourselves concurrently as we're developing our skills in relationship too. So, I think there are many different things that can help us in relationship, build our relationship skills, and I want to talk a little bit about some of those. First, I'm just going to mention that Katie Morton, Katimorton, has a really nice video on 5 tips for happy and healthy relationships. And I think her tips are really good because I think they do respond well to the question that Bryce is asking, what's really a true friend, or what's really a true intimate relationship? What's the basis of it? How do you build it? And, her 5 tips are, I think they're pretty good ones to start with. So let's just look at that. So first of all, we would want to be with somebody who's either willing to or has already done some work on their own path, but we have to own that as well. So everything that I suggest here is really about you taking care of your own growth, and that will help you find people who have had growth on this path as well of building relationships. So, if you've got areas of your life around relationships that you struggle with and you know that it's hard for you to get close with people, look into that. Spend some time with it. Understand where your triggers are. Kind of reflect a little bit on the ways in which you might, get tripped up or struggle or just feel uncomfortable, like the example that I gave in the beginning of the woman who says, maybe she just won't be good enough, or the guy who says, he loses interest, and he doesn't know why, or he's pushing people away, or the woman who was married to somebody who just was never present. Like, what's that about? The next one is to just slow down. Like, slow down. Like, allow yourself to take the time to really get to know somebody. Like this research study that I referenced from the University of Kansas, 200 hours to really develop a close connection. Now, how many people can you recall spending 200 hours with? Like, it takes time to build that. Sometimes we want to bypass all that and just get to instant intimacy and say, like, oh, yeah, well, I really got along with this person, so now they got to show up for me. And it's like, it just doesn't work that way, It's just not possible to have that level of expectation. So just slow down. The next one is really give space in the relationship. If something's going on, that person is busy or just not responding, they may have a very, very legitimate reason for that. Very sadly, in the last couple of weeks, I lost a very close friend, and it was really hard on my husband and I, because we were, close with this friend and, close with the family, and, as a result, like, I had to just cancel a whole bunch of things and hope that, the people I'm canceling with have, the ability to understand that, they need to give us space and that this is a reasonable expectation and that, this is a tough time. So give whoever you're in relationships with some space and show mutual respect. So what does that mean? Really, you don't want to be yelling at somebody if they don't give you what you want or need right away. It's only reasonable to allow yourself to, understand that we all have complications in life. We just sometimes can't, do what another person needs or wants. And anyways, really, we want to be in relationships with people who understand that, this is a mutual decision to deepen the relationship over time, and to do that in an environment of respect, mutual respect, where we give each other that sense of space and tolerance and understanding, where we can talk about the things that concern us. Because, every relationship eventually will have some kind of little bump, and you got to talk about things. And sometimes the conversation isn't always easy, and you want to be able to be gracious about it and listen without getting reactive. And that's really an inside job. Listening without getting reactive is about you being able to come to terms with your own personal struggles. If you're constantly telling yourself nobody loves me, and then, you got a new friendship and that person has to deal with something, or, has to put off a date or a meeting that you scheduled, it happens. So handle that with mutual respect. And if you feel uncertain or insecure, part of, addressing that is, especially in relationship, is coming from a place where you can be authentic and genuine and say, hey, I just wasn't sure if, something was going on, or if you just felt like you just didn't really have time right now. I know you canceled a couple of times. What's going on? So, sharing in a respectful way, and also being willing to forgive. So those are a few ideas about, good tips for, building healthy relationships. So thank you for that, Bryce. That's a really fabulous thing to reflect on as well. And now let's hear from Carla. So hi, Carla. Thank you for sending this in. Carla says, what about people who do not want attachment? I have been very hurt by several relationships in my life. I know that all people are not like that, but unfortunately I've met some doozies. Any clues as to how to find honest, trustworthy people? You never know. You know what? I think that's very true. I've done a number of videos on difficult relationships and narcissism and personality disorders. Attachment style is one of the issues, because if you're choosing to be in relationship with somebody who is inclined to push you away, or, has some, problematic behaviors that are dangerous, then for sure you need to step away. But you also need to read the emotional language. I like to think about the emotional shared space that we have with the people that are around us. And there's something very wise about that. So, when you're hanging out with somebody, you can kind of lean toward, so to speak, the emotional space that you are sharing. Very early in the relationship, you'll start to pick up things if you're really paying attention. You're correct. Not everybody wants attachment. As we have seen in some of in the explanations I've given you about the 4 styles, the reality is some people may not get to the place where they can reasonably address this issue. They're not ready to take that on, and that's fine. Knowing it and not wanting or needing to change it is important. One of the questions then I have to ask is, do you think, Carla, that you might be inclined to choose people who don't have attachment styles that will work for you? We do know that you might have to date quite a few people before you find people who have a secure attachment style. But when you find somebody who has a secure attachment style, you tend to really relax within inside of yourself. These 2 writers, Levine and Heller, this book Attached is a really good starting place. But they have said in the book, attachment principles teach us that most people are only as needy as their unmet needs. And when emotional needs are met, and the earlier the better, they usually turn attention outward. So what that really means is, if I feel secure in my relationship, if I'm feeling okay, then I'm not going to be as needy, right? It just makes so much sense. But, it's important just to kind of keep that in mind. This whole idea of attachment needs, they're not just for kids. I mean, we as adults really deeply need to, find relationships that are meaningful. I'm going to also give you some ideas of what it sounds like when people are feeling secure or not secure, insecure in their relationships. So listen to this. It's very, very interesting. This is an example of one type of attachment style. I'll tell you what it is shortly. I find it relatively easy to get close to others and am comfortable depending on them and having them depend on me. I don't often worry about being abandoned or about someone getting too close to me. So that's a secure attachment. That's a really good example of somebody who feels that they can be in relationship and then feels safe. Here's another one. I'm somewhat uncomfortable being close to others. I find it difficult to trust them completely. It's difficult to allow myself to depend on them. I'm nervous when anyone gets too close, and often love partners want me to be more intimate than I feel comfortable being. Well, that one's avoidant. Here's another one. I find that others are reluctant to get as close as I would like. I often worry that my partner doesn't really love me or won't want to stay with me. I want to merge completely with another person, and this desire sometimes scares people away. Now, that's anxious. So I really like this book, and I've recommended it to quite a few of my clients who come back and say it's pretty amazing. And it is, because all of a sudden you've got this great roadmap to understand, what's really happening in our relationships and how important it is to have that, connection, And I think it's really true because our partners really have a powerful effect on how well we can navigate this world. And, as I said before, research really shows this. The University of Toronto did a study, and they looked at heart disease and hypertension and the way in which marital discord and job strain can affect blood pressure. And in one of the studies, this researcher, Dr. Baker, found that if you have a mild form of high blood pressure, being in a satisfying marriage is good for you, and spending time in the presence of your partner actually benefits you by lowering your blood pressure. But if you're not in a happy, healthy, satisfying, nourishing relationship or marriage, then just being in the presence of your partner will elevate your blood pressure. And that's pretty significant. If just being in physical proximity of your spouse or your partner or your friend increases your blood pressure, that's not a good sign. So the book goes on to give you some questionnaires on both determining your own attachment style as well as your partner's attachment style. And I think that would probably be very worthwhile for anybody listening to this. I think those attachment styles are actually available online, this attachment questionnaire. If you go to, if you Google attached, the new science of adult attachment, and then adult attachment questionnaire, I think everybody will be able to get some access to that without working too hard. Okay, so let's read some more. Okay. Hi, Dave. Thanks so much for your email today. Dave just wants to say, very enlightening radio show today, great advice. And that's such a welcome thing to hear because, I'm kind of in a vacuum over here, so I don't hear exactly how this is, being received. So it's actually beautiful and wonderful to hear from all of you and any commentary that you have. And thank you so much, Dave, and I hope you're having a great day. And here's another one. And this is from Janice. Thank you, Janice, so much. Janice is saying, why is it that I get along better with my male friends than my female friends? It's not sexual, but I feel that there's no competition or drama with my male friends. Very interesting. Well, Janice, I have to ask, what your early experiences were with your primary caregiver's male and female, what those relationships look like, whether there was more strain in your relationship with a female caregiver versus a male caregiver. I think that would be worth doing some contemplation around. And again, let's think of our white tiger, Mohini, and, just the limiting version of reality that Mohini had embedded. The storyline that Mohini was with was that, I have to stay in this 12 by 12 area. Is it possible that there is a tendency or a bias to choose female connections that have maybe attachment styles that are not really beneficial? Because, in terms of the male and female population, it doesn't seem like there's much of a difference in terms of attachment style regarding your, the difference, the avoidant, attached, disorganized, insecure, anxious, and secure. So, it might be interesting to look at that. And, it also might be interesting to know a little bit more about, if you want to do some deeper reflection for yourself, what happens to you in those moments when you're interacting with a friend, what kind of inner language you use around the interaction you've had with your friend. Just notice what happens inside of you, and if you can sit with the discomfort without turning it into a story. So if the story is, these women, they just can't be trusted, or look at her, she's all about herself, whatever stories you tell yourself in these interactions, you might want to just notice the story. Ask yourself, when you first thought about your friendships in that way, whether it comes from an earlier relationship, and what that belief storyline, how rigidly kind of structured it is inside of you. Because sometimes we have beliefs about things that come from a historical past that pours into the present, and lower levels of events can create discomfort today. So I want to just go through a couple of more things because this is so interesting. So I want to just talk a little bit more, just to give you some heads up about, when you're trying to decipher whether a relationship is going to be healthy for you, you want to actually contemplate a few questions. Just notice in your relationships, either whether they're current, ongoing, intimate relationships or friendships or connections you're starting to build right now, just notice, does this person actually look for opportunities to connect more closely or more intimately? Is this person making the effort to reach out? The next one is, how preoccupied is this person with the relationship? Like, how sensitive is this person to getting rejected? Are they worried about things, about whether you love them enough or whether you're going to be faithful? Like, are you hearing a lot of this, highly anxious kind of need for you to reassure them? The next one is, don't just rely on just like one event. Kind of look for patterns of behavior. So one-time events are not a good indicator of what might be happening, fundamentally in a relationship. Here's another one. Just notice if the person responds well, like how do they manage around effective communication? Do they have the skills to talk about difficult things or differences of opinion or things that are, struggles in the relationship? Are you able to speak with respect? Like, for example, if the person wants to do something that you're not really on board with, are they able to take that, into consideration respectfully, or do they become very reactive and demanding? Here's another one. Just really take the time and listen and, pay attention to what the individual is kind of not saying. So what that really means is, like, you're looking for the behavior. What's underlying the behavior? Is there something for you to be noticing? Like, do you want to really pay attention to not just their words but their actions too? That's actually really, really an important thing, because otherwise you're going to be on an emotional roller coaster, and it's not that difficult to find yourself in a relationship with somebody who, maybe has an attachment style that won't really work for you in the long run. You want to catch that as early on in the relationship trajectory as you can, whether it's an intimate partner or it's a friendship, to just recognize that, this may not meet my truest relationship needs. You want to notice, if somebody has kind of difficult relationship tendencies pretty early on, so that you're not struggling in the long run, or, compensating for other people's relationship, as you said, Janice, drama. So you want to step away from the drama and be able to just, stay with people who you can be more authentic with, who you can effectively communicate with, who you can trust. And, kind of feel more, like, give yourself the message. This is really for everybody. Give yourself the message that, you can go out into the world, and there are a lot of people who really want close and deep connection. Otherwise, nobody would be listening to this radio show right now. People want connection. There's an abundance of people who are out there right now saying, I want to build better, closer friends. I want a close, intimate relationship. So count on that and rise to the challenge to give people who are secure or can become secure with their own growth, give them the chance of building that strength. So I really love this book, and I would really recommend it to everybody. I'm going to just read the title again, and I'm just going to read this last email from Mike. Such great advice and topic. You helped me today with your discussion. Well, thank you, Mike. That's so very nice to hear. Always glad to be here every Thursday, the last Thursday of the month, whenever I can, to have these conversations with you about bearing witness to evolving mood, mind, health, and really opening up the conversation about these things that are so important. So this is Attached, the new science of adult attachment, and how it can help you find and keep love. And I think it's a really great thing to read through. It's a powerhouse of growth and understanding. I think is worth taking the time to read. And, it even goes through ways to change your own attachment style. If you're finding that you're, pushing people away, learning how to deactivate your own tendencies, de-emphasizing self-reliance and focusing on mutual support. See, we live in a world in which we're always focused on, being kind of an island on our own. I had to teach myself not to do this a little bit as well, because I tend to be, I can do a lot of things, so, I just do them. Now I have an amazing, wonderful, remarkable team of people who help me with a lot of things, and I just feel like I've opened up a whole new world, and it's wonderful to let people in and to be less self-reliant. So, I like that piece of advice. Trying to be aware of people who have good relationship skills and to let them in. To be aware that you might have a tendency to misinterpret other people's behavior, to take things more personally than you need to, and that can get you in trouble as well. And to make a relationship gratitude list. So if you have people in your life and you notice that you tend to kind of talk about, the things that upset you about them, maybe you also want to consider the ways in which they are great in your life and create a gratitude list. And, stop pretending that, you're going to find some special person or some person from the past who you need back in your life. Like, be with what's happening now. Try to be in the relationship you're in now or the friendships that you're in now. Try to really learn about who the people in your life are now. So you're not looking for necessarily a soulmate, but you're looking for a real person who can show up for you in real time and appreciate how powerful that is. And also, and this is the final one, adopt a distraction strategy so that, if you're interacting with somebody who maybe struggles a bit to be kind of emotionally present, then, maybe engage in, a walk in the park or, making food together or doing activities that allow you to be together and get to know each other slowly over time and, feel a little bit safer in that relationship. And I want to thank everybody for joining us again today. Wishing you a gentle day, and we will be posting this video, and enjoy the rest of your summer. See you in September. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Bear Psychology Radio Show with psychologist, author, and speaker, Dr. Anna Baranowski, right here on Reality Radio 101.